Hello, my name is Anthony Wall. There are a bunch of people tied to the FBI involved with Puff Daddy in New York City, involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and James Comey, and his daughter, also involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases, involved with child abusers, campuses, intercities. There's an officer, Darth Vader, with Trinity College, refusing to identify themselves because they have roles with some courts and prosecutors and judges and their family members and their intimate ties before the World Trade Center attack and after it. And they have roles with untimely death at Trinity College with people on my street in Weathersfield with ones from other areas who influenced them forced to roles. And they don't even know that because they're just putting fake conversations, ties between everyone. They'll tell you I barely know my past neighbors and my new ones. Increasingly, Kevin Dillon is involved planting evidence on all sides of my houses and trying with the people with my educators too. They did that, brought up the people on all sides of my house, and they increasingly have their roles with fire departments, with Russians in Ukraine, involved with them too at Trinity College with Puff Daddy, and people at Hartford Hospital, involved also with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin's co-defendants and their family members, and a Robert Chevrolet, the lawyer, people and places associated with him, and like Hartford Hospital and Connecticut's District Court. They also have rules with child abusers, like Mendez police, a fake conversations with me at the police station too. I never had a word of conversation with the older Mendez police brother. He's one of the ones involved forcing a principal child abuser in Weathersfield campuses who had time collusions intercities with some untimely deaths at Trinity College, all kinds of federal evidences, crimes there. They put me with a fake sending a letter to a written letter fake to Mr. Um, um, Hugh Ogden, involved also with people from Maine, with the intelligence community, involved with medical locations, and with Maine University, with former Governor Malloy, has the rules with intelligence families at East Hartford locations, male and females involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and judges and prosecutors, people on up to the state of Connecticut corrections offices, judicial branch offices, also involved with Maine University, and with his presidency there, and how he left and I still haven't gotten a response for what I recorded them doing with the kids, forcing them, and with WTNH with the FBI too, and their sources putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. And they have increasingly people with the state corrections offices of Connecticut and the judicial branch offices of Connecticut involved with collusions with the World Trade Center predicate acts, with the attack at the World Trade Center, with names involved with all natures of organized crimes there, and with names next to it like Scalora and tied to the name Scalora, involved interstates with identity theft, fraud, slanders, people putting fake ties and fake natures of ties to people that don't even go to the same classes, putting fake things in databases. Increasingly, intelligence communities involved with people in Glastonbury with the name Oliveri, tied to the name Oliveri Scalora and Cololo and Gruzet. They're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, a whole bunch of different countries and people next to campuses putting predicate acts and facts in databases with judicial branch offices, corrections offices, even medical campuses and fire campuses are running in with their family members to hide lipogressions at hospital locations. Mass evidence is racketeering there with their family members with the same house slash house involved with their kids too, with family with untimely deaths and murders that intercities have connections and confessions and roles with all the types of countering bodies to types of instances and types of crimes. Our roles with all kinds of predicate acts with facts, all criminally foreign influence uses of locations already. Everything that comes before them, they are shown they need to hide. Sequence shifts, other things. They use everything that comes before them to pretend they're against crimes, while they are roles of predicate acts with facts and way worse crimes and the same natures of crimes that they put people way worse crimes than they put people in jail for, including little kids, including with prisons. The corrections officers involved with all kinds of intelligence corruption with the kids and adults. Now they're trying to train them and have them take oaths. The adults are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, regarding the value of their oaths, regarding the readings of the American Constitution, of what the value of what others say. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had black pupils' rights of eyes left out, even though our founders too, and especially our founders too, our community, especially nature itself, is showing us a breaching method reassigned with black people's rights of eyes communicate. And everyone rolls, otherwise that body was sensed. And then America's founders were born. And that's including if that body was a majority of people or everyone. If they try to counter things that was against the law to counter things verbally, they would have pretended to attack, and then the law to hurt that people and everyone next to them. There were internationally monitored conversations entrenched as time collusions, the difference of their guilt or of the overt criminal enterprises or of the private ones we know were standing or of the terrorists, only capable of being. Originally and still, we were supposed to understand why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and now, still going further and further away from what our founders communicated for us to understand about these founding locations and about their uses of James Madison's plan. Their use of James Madison's plan to counter-extort and force the rest of the founders, both colonists and Native Americans, to get those to get that unentrenched, that which, for example, which he even had the communications of our black pupils and whites of eyes, fact human nature tortured, extorted, in fact human nature enslaved, therefore physically, northern colonies and southern colonies. That's worse than made, kept unclear, changed, and obfuscated. It's work had tactically changed. Our founders communicated. The only reason they left northern South colonies and southern colonies both roles with slavery is because the breaching method was entrenched too deeply. No one wanted roles with it against themselves too. Otherwise, they're sensed. And there was a method. It would do an algorithm. It controlled the questions. Everyone's either pretending they don't realize their collusions against themselves and everyone around them, and humanity's voicings altogether. Otherwise, that body was sensed. In other words, our founders demonstrated to us they were criminally foreign influence industries involved. We're not supposed to address economies, leaving out how there were a whole bunch of industries originally still incapable of defending their worth and ourselves and our own legitimately, honestly, at the same time. While they are tactically delusions wrought, and the experts on reason have stayed collusions right through world wars with Germans and Americans and Russians and Ukraine. Russia and America were here together before our founders were born. China was here before our founders were born. Here and there we were shared but now through systems since semi-ancient times, tactical terror from how nature has us grouped, species, body, bound unity, while simultaneously a whole bunch of an individual species body of individual bodies, simultaneously independent. It wants us to see what's not just simultaneously unified and independent distinctly, non-distinctly, but simultaneously / hyper simultaneously, showing us the hyper simultaneous, that distinct nature of simultaneous nature that is not our species body, is not the other species bodies, but it is all species bodies anyway. It is showing us that way. Many pray. New Yorkers. I was in the Ninth Circuit Court as an observer next to the World Trade Center towers. Connecticut's news. They have Gail King. Many tied to Gail King recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed her involved with WFSB intelligence in intercities and interstates intelligence, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. There's all kinds of differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes, and pretending other. And they can't defend that and their styles of it and their natures of it and afford us to defend ourselves from the breaching method that has the black-white collusions originally and still, and all exceptions as collusions, exactly the way the breaching method keeps them voiced. These are people with the campuses of New York City with all kinds of psychiatry, racketeering, medicines, crimes, with each campus is next to it. So they could leave those collusions, then they're gone from that campus, and the names next to it are already putting fake things in databases and building on that. This is a method. There's only 3 branches of government. So easy they keep them criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and styles pretending they can't even defend their natures of law descriptions, of order descriptions, And for it to have to be what nature itself communicates about order and about relativity too. No, it's not a theory. We have black people's rights of eyes. About we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time, while others completely different species bodies have quality aspects in nature distinct, but also non-distinct and simultaneously again. But that per that further hyper simultaneous, per that further distinct identity of simultaneous nature per science is not us nor them, but it is all while it is all things anyway. That to an extent we can discern these ways. And wherever we could discern it to an extent, it comes with its complete identity relationship to itself. And the only increasing value of that here, or it is forced away from here, as forced space nature transfer of Earth's a special difference as our own, as forced space nature transfer as a negative identity of relationship to which complete identity, that which has Earth's a special difference, temporary slash lasting value. But only our one species has been stayed, self-valued, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, while being used remotely, criminally foreign influence slash hyper-criminally foreign influence, and pretending not to realize all three. The slash part is criminal insidiousness nature itself, hyper invisible but still discernible the value of your positive treatments and your negative treatments, America. You have come through campuses ill. They have replaced fact treatment. They have replaced our founders' declassified communications for us and what nature itself communicates. Off flank, retrain, retrain, religion, hear your name again. Ye black pupils, here. All see the whites of eyes. Each campus bow and fall, build wall, and they recede. Republic must the ancient republic has stayed abridged since semi-ancient times, incapable of defending roles with itself abridged and affording to be, let alone to protract words proper as they are capable of being through the science of pantheism about this hyper invisible but still discernible, about seeing through even if its own ism, it is distinct. That identity of hyper simultaneous nature that we know, if, for example, if a finite detail is left out, group details, or the active nature is being imposed as a value of relativity. So we have criminal insidious natures of order having been self-valued by the interbranch, where they have been stayed with those locations, a certain type of victim slash hyper victim, only capable of responding to what that caused as collusion slash S. The state of Connecticut corrections offices and the prisons, they increasingly have collusion slash S with people next to each of the campuses I went to. And they were all influenced. These are people like a Ray Reynolds and a Joshua. Ray Reynolds is increasingly people involved. I never had his educators are involved with identity theft, fraud, standards. A whole bunch of people tied to a Ray Reynolds interstates with Rhode Island, with Vermont, and with Connecticut, involved with Wethersfield Police and State Police and Whiting Forensics and FBI and Foreign and Domestic Intelligence per themselves and per his educators of Ray Reynolds, involved with them with identity theft, fraud, slanders. I never tried to contact Ray Reynolds. In other words, a whole bunch of people involved with Eric Jensen too, with and Middlesex Community College, with medical and sexual offenders of kids, with judges and prosecutors involved with probate courts, with the same house slash S planting evidences on all sides of my house, with people involved with judges and prosecutors putting fake transcripts in databases while tactically delusions raw, as they have stayed. The voices of American history, the voices have pretended dishonestly. That I mean that the sciences have been honest at any location, let alone New York City, clearer than day. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Syntax regarding the fact dreamy nature and physical impositions upon the people of our country. They have our founders' words. Our founders communicate. They have our founders' words used, leaving out what they declassified about that and about how and why they did not have free speech. They declassified even why. In other words, we know that they had crazy laws. We're supposed to address how and why in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut. There's a witch trials place right next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and now, still further and further, they're telling other about the places the founding locations, then our founders communicated about them and about how they had to counter extort George Washington and get him. He helped them to counter extort the rest of the founders, Native Americans and colonists. You better understand that. It's not about, in other words, this is before the before George Washington even knew about the plan. George Washington had no means but to help. But they had to leave slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. Rather than communicate that for our founders, they declassified it. They wanted us to understand why and how the breaching method assigned the black people's rights of eyes and roles communicating other for nature with it. Otherwise, that body was sensed, including it was a majority of people, including with everyone it was adapted to, because it was a breaching method entrenched. Nature itself shows us there was a breaching method entrenched. What is one of the things true always, that all those crazy laws were about: witch trials, slavery laws, crazy sustained fighting against Native Americans, cultivation laws, while they're cultivating unity between Native Americans and Native Americans as criminal and ceaseless natures of positive and negatives as collusions, to keep differences racketeering, to keep everyone with the voicings for humanity as systems tactile than human species body of individual bodies, all group differences generated by it. You guys have the breaching method training your conversations and your subject treatments about group differences and about principles of reason. When you want to look things up, oh, what's your research? Get them on paper, one name and sequence at the branch, Connecticut, with the ones next to the World Trade Center involve all kinds of natures of organized crime and the news at the same time. Connecticut's Channel 3 News has roles interstates, also with the sources of WTNH and people involved with the Diddy at Trinity College and Usher, in other words, in other words, and which is ludicrous. People at three spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike are increasingly involved. The intelligence community and their family members take pictures and try to make fake ties, fake natures of ties to people with complete strangers involved with totally changing and faking what's digitally recorded with them, like a Joshua Julian with child sex offenders, leaders of kids. Increasingly, top ones tied to a Delafair family. I had no class with them. I never saw them around schools. The Delafaras. They're one of the ones involved with some probate court judges, involved with some sexual medical offenders, and people involved with identity thefts and frauds that grew up around me. And they're increasingly involved with the interbranch, refusing to get on paper one name and sequence. And Wethersfield police, they fake conversations with me at the police station too. Wasn't even at all. As a kid and then as an adult too. With these Mendez police, increasingly involved with the Saudi attackers, with people named Scalora too, per other police, forging and switching names, making confessions, them running away. In other words, I'm not going to go down there and speak with them. They faked the conversation with me as an adult and as a kid. We're going to speak right here. The whole America wants to know too. We're sick of it. What are you doing with Puff Daddy at Trinity College and Harvard Hospital with the FBI directors and James Comey and probation officers involved with murders and people with judges and prosecutors with the FBI before the World Trade Center attack and after it, who are playing games at Trinity College with my neighbors involved with untimely deaths too? And then everyone's switching names and things. And it's because I'm on Facebook. Hang it down. The Wethersfield Police have their Facebook page. The Britain Superior Court has their Facebook page involved with wire crimes with a guy who says his name is Darth Vader, too, at Trinity College, involved with people with some untimely deaths and federal evidence of crimes interstates with my neighbors, like with the ones Ray Collo is increasingly involved with people at and next to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, involved with them with New Britain. The New Britain Avenues in West Hartford and Wethersfield, and one's in Rocky Hill in Wethersfield, town lines. Their roles with the military, criminally foreign influence, tactical illusions, and with the police departments. You better get me off the fake conversations and ties to them, and natures of ties to the people around them. And what's the name of the guy who's reportedly the roommate of Ray Collo, and a whole bunch of people next to Fox Canoes involved with him. And those buildings next to them, including the church there, involved with child abusers, leaders of kids years ago. And those abused kids, like ones with the name Perone and Kerr, I never had classes with them. Never saw them on campuses. One time I saw real quick on my career on campus, they made a fake exception. There are roles with the corner of Town Line Drive and Salstein Highway, also with people with names Demorrow and Kalal involved with federal evidence crimes with courts and their educators and foreign and domestic military, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and a whole bunch of people with the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices involved with wire mail crime with them, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Get me off a fake conversation with these Mendez police and the ones with the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News, involved with them in the FBI too. First, too, and get them on paper, one name in sequence, any one of the branches. The Bridge Superior Court has their Facebook page, also involved with the High Crest Facebook page with some sexual and medical offenders. These are also some educators with the intelligence community at West Hartford with the name O'Neill that are increasingly involved with the World Trade Center attack, therefore with wars. These are also investigators of the World Trade Center attack and translators involved with the criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, or all kinds of corruption with courts and their family members, like a Dr. Shu with modern languages has family involved with probate courts, and his neighbors involved with my neighbors, also with those spots next to where he lives in Newington, with a whole bunch of people from Wethersfield into branch offices putting predicate acts with facts and then covering that up with everything that comes before them. And they're searching for ways to make arrests and things like that. And so they can bring people before the courts. They have to show since they're themselves and their kids, they need to hide life progressions. They can't afford to have one subject with a proper treatment of it. That's one of the reasons why and how black people's whites of eyes was left out, even though everyday nature is communicating to us with it. You still have black and white voices, exactly where the breaching method engineered that. I'm going to show you how little kids could discern this and how you guys forget about that, because you have them with sick campuses playing games with the difference of the corruption there or off it, or the names next to it, which they're also just attaching everyone to fake conversations with themselves, because they effectively have styles that are a bunch of fakes while pretending other A through Z. Three branches of government, they're going to hide them, in other words, because it's too scary for them. And with the state judicial branch office and corrections office, even further with them, with all sides of criminal and civil cases in their own names at the same time, putting the same sequence shifts, and with the news and names next to relative bodies on big spots. Also brought up at the same time with the murders and untimely deaths, with the ones at Trinity College and the names on my street in Wethersfield. Increasingly this this officer that used the name Darth Vader is also involved with the ones with Diddy and Usher and these all sides of these. Before I even knew there was a case tied to Diddy, I brought him up with it. He has roles with 2011 and with people involved too. The people that are involved that with 2011, currently for influencing, they have roles with 2006 and Connecticut, with the ones that were involved with the World Trade Center in New York and Washington, D.C., involved with all kinds of organized crimes with them. People all along Route 175 is increasingly what ties them, is their roles with names all along Route 3 and with people associated with that as their motivation. Like a Joseph Dennis and a John Dennis have roles with former mayors too, with all along Route 173 near Central Connecticut State University. All sides of it are people that planted evidences on my street, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, with the people with the people that lived here. And since they moved in, like a Kalal house moved into 80 Carroll Drive. Reportedly, there was another intimate tie to a former police chief that lived there too. And that house is increasingly involved with people involved with medical and sexual offenders of kids, identity thefts and frauds, fake things in databases, all sides of criminal and civil cases, in the courts putting the fake things in databases and their delusions. These are also medical offenders of kids on a mass scale, interstates. There are people with the name O'Connor, a mother and daughter, a leader of the kids, who have more people involved with medical corruption and professions that brought their names up. And they're still lying to my family about what I caught them. They're hiding to families of Wethersfield what I caught them doing with the kids. And that's recorded too, but I can't get them on paper because there's other natures of organized crimes and things they pretended I had conversations with others about, which they're hiding. I caught them involved with murders and things like that intercities. Even if the murders, untimely deaths, and all the things were made up, those people were also recorded involved with predicate acts before and after the World Trade Center with the F.B.I. and the news that attached me to fake conversations with themselves too. And in other words, no one's getting me on paper since they've been putting fake things in databases at campuses and at courts and with police departments. That's why they don't get on paper. That's why you have me here begging for you to get them every year since the World Trade Center attack. Central Connecticut State University has roles intercities and intra-cities and intercampuses with predicate acts with facts methods. In other words, get them on paper, one name in sequence, please. Get them on paper.